Hello, welcome. Today we're going to look a little bit more at a poem by Barber called We Which Live. We touched on this briefly at the end of a video on the Overcomer magazine by Jesse Penn Lewis. And today we'll talk a little bit more about its context. And verse 1, I wanted to talk about maybe the content of the whole poem, but I'm really struck by verse 1. So we'll just get into one verse today. Just a few years before the publishing of this poem, 1907, she would experience kind of the seminal crisis of her life. She would be sent back to England in shattered poor health and mostly in disgrace from her fellow missionaries back in Fuzhou, China. And there she would leave the Anglican mission. She would eventually leave the Anglican church, receive believers' baptism by immersion. All this was a part of her joining the undenominational church under the leadership of D.M. Panton called Surrey Chapel in Surrey, Norwich. After a short period of time under the influence and shepherding of that church, she would boldly go back to China in 1909. And not just any part of China, she would go back to Fuzhou, the city that she had been called to in the first place and had many friends and contacts and somewhat adversaries. She would boldly return, not as a part of any larger mission, but just as a saint sent by God, part of the body of Christ, with no salary or credentials to speak of, only the pledge of spiritual support, prayer, from the saints sending her back at Surrey Chapel. So she would return as an independent missionary, really going it alone, looking unto the Lord alone to supply, to uphold, and to bless the call on her life. So this poem, first published in 1910, and I would say likely written in the year or two before 1910, comes at a really interesting time in her life. In 1909, she would first come back into China. Other anecdotes report these first few years as the hardest time in her life. So in the midst of these hard challenges, maybe just as they're starting, we see this poem pop up. And it's striking because it's positive, joyful, serious, and encouraging us to live in the full blessing of God. Now let's take a look at just the first verse. The title, again, is We Which Live. And then every stanza of this verse has the word live in all caps. That's how it's published. So it's very strong, powerful, exhorting us to live in the love of God. And that's our first verse. I'll read the whole first verse. Live in the love of God. Deal with the Lord alone. Live in the blaze of that white light that beats about God's throne. So I am principally struck by these opening lines, live in the love of God, and then deal with the Lord alone. It's one thing to experience God's love, but Miss Barber presents her view on this of how to live, not just experience, but live every day in God's love. And it is to do what the next line says, deal with the Lord alone. What an amazing sentence. Deal with the Lord alone. It's a challenge to our prayer life, to our expectations, to our experiences in our Christian life to deal only with God. How often when there's a crisis or a problem or a situation, do we do other things? We may just be quick to make plans to solve our problems. Or we may go right to some other Christians, whether friends or a mentor, to talk about what's going on, to get their advice, think through what to do, even pray to find God's will together. But it's together. We might be leaning more on people than on the Lord. Her word is to deal with the Lord alone. Why can't God just be the answer to your situation? Why can't he just answer your simple, believing, clear, trusting prayer? It's in this place of dealing with the Lord alone that our spiritual life, our ability to pray in the name of Jesus and receive clear answered prayers, answers to those prayers, is really put on the spot. It's much easier to go have fellowship. It's much easier to go make a plan. If the Lord is the only one who knows our problems, and our prayer is that he would clearly solve or answer or come through in our problems, well, that really puts everything on our asking and his miracle. That's a big challenge. But then what are the benefits of dealing with the Lord alone in this kind of way? Well, you really come into a life where you're living in the love of God, meaning everything, every need, every prayer is being answered by God. You're seeing the touches of his love, the move of his grace dotted throughout your life. You may have a need, say it's for a challenge in a relationship, and you don't know how to get through with it. Just in your day in the Word, your prayer before the Lord, he may put something in your heart. Maybe different than what you would like to say to that person, but you decide to try it. And if that word works, you realize, wow, God really can help me through that situation. Often, many people experience this in regards money. And this dealing with the Lord alone regarding money is the training ground that God has used for many powerful servants of the Lord. Think about Hudson Taylor, if you're familiar with any of his experiences. Early in his teenage years, when he was setting himself to be prepared to be sent to China, he was still in England, but he was already bound for China in his heart. He decided that he would not ask his employer for money. Yes, it's a job. He's supposed to give him the paycheck, but if anything slipped up, he wouldn't remind the employer. He instead would pray. His heart was that he could learn in England what he needed to really do in China, and that was to move men by God alone. So there it happened. It happened one time. His employer forgot to pay him at the end of the week, and he was poor, desperately in need of that paycheck, couldn't pay his rent, and he decided to pray. And there's a great story in his biography that draws out the lessons that God taught him in that moment. But eventually, in the nick of time, at the very end of his need, God reminded the employer, and he realized he had forgotten and paid him right away. It took a couple days. Hudson Taylor really had to pray, but God alone was the answer to his prayer. And only God knew what that miracle meant to Hudson Taylor. George Mueller also put himself on the spot to experience this. Not just himself, but he wanted to see a living testimony in his world, his age then, that God answers prayer. And his leading before the Lord was to begin to open up orphanages, funded alone by prayer. They didn't do campaigns for money or these kind of things, but they would pray for their daily bread. And eventually he took in hundreds more of orphans, all fed and upheld and funded by their prayer. Emmy Barber herself would see this experience of dealing with the Lord be taken to an extreme near the end of her life. She might have been experiencing it to some degree in 1909 and 1910. And then in the 1920s, God would bring her to an experience, 1920s, around that decade. We'll talk about this in another video. She had an experience where the rent was due and she had no money. And in China at that time, the culture was a year's rent was due up front. And she had rented 10 rooms of hospitality. It was also the living quarters for many of her full-time workers who were being trained under her. So she had the care of her and her group for the whole year on her shoulders, and she had a Chinese dollar left. And in that time, she came across, I believe it's a beggar on a bridge, on the road. I'm just telling this story off the cuff. She came across a beggar, and the Lord led her to give that person the last dollar. And she struggled. That was a challenge. You see all the $120 I have to come up with next week, and I only have $1. Well, eventually, she obeyed. She gave that beggar her last dollar. And then on the very last day, in a real miraculous kind of way, the Lord had her bank account go from zero to the full amount in just a single day, right as the bill was due. She was dealing with the Lord alone. She didn't tell people she had her need. She didn't write home to England, say, quick, I have a need. Fund, pray, please. No, she was on her knees, dealing with the Lord alone. Well, this is a powerful experience, a very real experience. It's for not just the giants, but it's been the training ground of those who want to go deeper with the Lord throughout the past couple centuries. You see this again and again and again, dealing with the Lord, that he can really answer your prayers. Now, those examples were about money, but this is so real in so many things beyond money in our Christian life. Saints, I just encourage you, deal with the Lord alone. Get into a place where you can honestly pray something and the Lord can be the miracle. The Lord can be the one that answers. And when that doesn't come through, well, you're put on the spot. You may have to wrestle with the Lord. How come you didn't answer my prayer? Maybe there's something on your conscience. Maybe there's an obedience from a year ago that you forgot about, but the Lord had not. There may be something you have to make right. When we're right and healthy, the Lord can just answer our prayers. I think this training ground of dealing with the Lord alone is what Miss Barber means by the last couple lines of this stanza. Live in the blaze of that white light that beats about God's throne. It's intense, it's challenging, it's hard to just turn to the Lord in prayer for a specific situation. But you experience in that intensity of need, the intensity of a living God, intensity of a loving God, where he really can bring you into extremes and he can really carry you all the way through. So saints, deal with the Lord alone and learn to live a life on fire.